Good evening and welcome to the second episode, even though the first one hasn't aired yet, of Comic Couch over here at the 17 Waverly podcast.
Gabby, it actually doesn't. It's one of those things where you don't even need to say that. I think because it's a podcast, so it's like nobody notices when you're going to be posting.
I know, but just like the logistical messes are always fun for me behind the scenes, and sometimes I feel about like television or any kind of projects in general, how we always get the clean cut result. I actually want to know the disasters that went that took place beforehand, and just
so everything along the way that we do is always going to be just outright. We're going to be very transparent about everything that we do.
Things that don't work, the mistakes, if I fuck up a fact, I will bring it up weeks later.
I mean, we fuck up a lot of facts on the main podcast.
Oh, absolutely, we're fake news all the time, and it's not even on purpose.
But hey, that's what we do. We have fun.
What we do. Today, what I want to talk about for this second episode, even though there are bits of news, and this is my co-host I'm Gab. This is my co-host, the
suckers?
Grumpiest kind of comic fan, Rom.
What's up, suckers?
Who I guess kind of cares about comic books, but
to a certain extent.
Definitely isn't shy about letting me know when he thinks something is complete trash. So
100%.
Today, being Wednesday, it's New Comic Wednesday, and we, for any diehard comic fans, know it's the release of the first issue for House of X by Jonathan Hickman. We know that for months and months we've been getting this has been hyped. So many variant covers.
So House of X is the name of the comic.
Or
is the name of the series of comics.
Okay, so as you can see, this guy knows nothing. So we're really the blind leading the blind. So House of X is the name of this limited series. It's a 6-issue limited series by Jonathan Hickman.
Sure.
But alongside this House of X is a comic called Powers of 10. They're both X-Men comics. So every week they're going to alternate. You'll get one issue of House of X, one issue of Powers of 10, one issue of House of X, one issue of Powers of 10.
So there's two different stories going on at the same time?
But they connect. So as they go, they're going to connect, and they tell one large story. And after these...
seems redundant.
Huh?
That seems redundant. Like, why wouldn't you just put it all...
Because they're each telling within, like, the spine of each is its own thing. They just connect. Think of a fucking Venn diagram. 2 circles, they tell their own thing, but there's something in the middle that connects.
Right, but like, why not tell one story, then tell the second
story?
God
damn it. That's just how they fucking wanted to do it. Holy fuck.
All right. It is what it is.
Well, we're going to have fun with this. We haven't even touched the plot yet.
We'll just have to deal with that.
Yeah, I guess. It's real headache. So today was the first one. This has been super hyped as a thing that's going to change like the foundation of the X-Men. It's going to change the future of the X-Men. It's going to bring them back to the forefront of being relevant in the X-Men comics. Personally, I'm a huge X-Men fan. Most people know this. My heart broke for the last time when they relaunched and they were trying to hype Uncanny X-Men #1, like they were bringing back the Uncanny title. I picked that up, bought it. I couldn't get through it. Like, this is absolute shit. We have to stop recycling.
Isn't the Uncanny shit from like the 60s?
Well, Uncanny X-Men was the title of the book that came out after 1975. So once it was always called X-Men, but then it became titled The Uncanny X-Men when characters like Wolverine, Storm, Nightcrawler, Colossus.
And that was in like the 70s.
70s. But that's when X-Men became like the biggest.
Since the 70s, it's been X-Men Uncanny.
Variations. There has been other shit because then it became so big that they made other titles. They made X Factor, New Mutants. They made other stuff because it was the most prominent and the biggest comic of the time.
Right.
So you can see how frustrating it is as an X-Men fan to see how they've become absolute shit.
Sure.
But that's also the politics of the studios, because since Marvel Studios didn't own the rights to X-Men, they haven't been investing in the characters.
Right.
So in the comics, they've taken not the back seat, they've taken the trunk.
Okay.
So now, because Fox is Marvel Studios has X-Men again. Hey, Jonathan Hickman, you want to do something with the X-Men characters?
And who is John Hickman or this Planet
Jonathan
Hickman guy?
Hickman's a comic book writer. He wrote stuff like
what's something big that he did?
Secret Wars, but you don't know what Secret Wars is. And he had a run on the Avengers as well. He's a good writer.
Okay.
So when this was promoted,
what's more important aren't the artists just as important?
Yes.
The writers?
For me, yes, because I think you have people who write in a certain way, and this is just my personal opinion. If the art doesn't at least complement or isn't in sync with the tone of the writer,
Sure,
it doesn't go as well. I think it's a dance. I think that it's a dance between writer and artist. The artist needs to interpret needs to interpret the writer's script and create those images. It's usually not artist to writer, it's writer to artist. It's the artist's job to bring to life what the writer's
so there's
creating.
never really like an artist, and then he's like, "Oh, I have an idea for a comic. I just want to have somebody write it for me."
I think it's the reverse. I think
usually the other way around.
it's usually
so it's always like a writer comes up and goes, "I have this great idea for a comic, but I need a writer."
But there's also amazing artists like Jim Lee who are so established in the industry that if Jim Lee says like, this is just off the top of my head, if he probably was like, "Hey, I want to do a comic and draw something," people are familiar enough with Jim Lee's work that they'd want to just jump on the chance to write for him. I'm sure there has to be situations like that there are artists and their styles that are so like, holy shit, that writers want to team up with them and be like, I have a story that. But that's just me. I don't know.
So this guy Hickman
is a writer.
He
came up with these ideas for these 2 limited series stories, 6 and 6, total will be 12.
Did he want to do this, or did he?
Yeah, he definitely wanted to do this. He had an idea.
He wasn't like just like, "Oh, let's hire this hired gun to like."
I think he had an idea just because reading this issue, I'm like, this is an issue with reading this. You know when you read something and you know that the person who's doing it has a vision.
Right.
They're not just
like
trying to fill
it. Doing it because he was getting a paycheck.
Right. They're not trying to fill a quota. They have an idea. And one of the conditions, though, is that he said, okay, like when I do this, though, cancel every X-Men book that's out right now and start over. And Marvel was like, yes. So
that makes sense.
At Comic-Con, they announced what those six titles will be. Maybe I'll get into that at the end of this, but it's that's all the way in October because it's 12 weeks of this.
Yeah.
So I'll get to that later, but
so he's only signed on to do this one like random story that he's doing.
No, he'll also be. I think he'll be overseeing the 6 titles, and he's writing the main X-Men book. That'll be coming out in October. So he's on board. I think he's on board for the X-Men for a while.
There's also a book coming out.
But comic book, the book. He'll be seeing the main X-Men comic book.
Right, but the comic books have already come out. Like, this is a comic book.
God damn it. The new ones of the 6 titles that are going to be launching after the miniseries ends.
So you mean... Okay, so this series is out right now.
Sure, yes. Yeah, House of X is out.
House of X is out right now, and it's got...
Issue 1 today.
Episodes. It's going to have 12 episodes.
It's going to have 6 episodes. Powers of 10 will have 6, total 12. These 2 stories that complement each other.
Okay, so then at the end of these 12 episodes...
Issues, I don't know why I keep saying episodes. It's not a show.
Then there's a new story that's going to start. That's going to be a book.
The 6 new comic titles will launch. The 6 new books.
Oh, so there's going to be 6 new
X-Men titles. Like yes, 6 new X-Men titles ongoing.
And then he's going to oversee them and put them all together?
Yes. I think not put them all together, but they'll be their own stories, but part of the X-Men universe that
I think what
oversee.
I'm confused here is that you're using the term book.
They're books, goddammit. They're comics. They're comic books.
You're using one, like, as if there's just one book. Like, that's what I'm saying.
Fuck. This is really fun. No, there's 6.
So I'm thinking, he's going to oversee the book. So I'm just thinking, there's going to be a specific book that you're talking about.
Holy fuck.
But if you had just said, he's going to oversee all of the new comic books that are coming out for X-Men,
moving on.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Oh, this is gonna be such a respected podcast. I can barely. We're off to a great start.
Okay, so what the hell is this dumbass shit about?
We just lost every person listening who's a comic fan with that comment.
What is this?
So to get into the plot right off the bat, because I think that's the biggest thing that people have wanted to know. I didn't have my hopes that high here. I was going to give it a chance. Like I said, after that Uncanny X-Men #1, I pretty much quit.
Okay.
So I was like, well, what's the idea? So what he presents here in the very opening scene, you have these people who represent governments of 6 different nations showing up to this building, covered in like trees and shit, and they're like, I'm like, what the fuck? And they're there to meet with Charles Xavier. You know who Charles Xavier is? All right. They're there to meet with him because
Egg's head.
Yeah, he's not named. Okay. There's a deal on the table. There's something to be negotiated, and they're there to see if they're going to come up with a deal to negotiate what's going on. When they get there, they're not met by Xavier. Xavier's fucking busy. He ain't got time for these clowns.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's the principal of a school. He's the principal of the school.
Sure. Yeah, you really don't know. Okay. So instead, he's met by Magneto and two.
Who's his arch nemesis?
Who not anymore. Not in this book.
In this book, he's not an arch nemesis.
No, they're working together.
Interesting. Okay.
So
I do like that because I like Magneto.
What I will say, so let me tell you what the stakes are, because for the first time, like people were saying, everything's already been done. There's nothing new to do. There's elements in this first issue that I'll say, well, we've seen that before, but they've added these little things that just make it completely new. And I'll say this. For the first time, mutants have leverage in this conversation about mutant rights and like the mutants' ability to represent themselves and have their own autonomy. And this is how. In the 1970s, we were just talking about Uncanny X-Men launching in the 70s.
Sure.
There was something called Giant-Sized X-Men #1. That book launched that introduced Storm, Nightcrawler, Colossus, and it brought Wolverine into the X-Men.
Right.
The mission of that comic book was that the X-Men needed to go to an island to rescue the original X-Men team that were trapped there.
The retired heads.
The OG5.
Yeah, the retired guys.
So they went there only to find that this island is sentient, like it's alive.
Right.
The island itself is a mutant. And they have to fight this fucking island. It's a whole thing. For coming out in the 70s, it was an allegory for the war in Vietnam. Sending
Correct.
young people to an island to have the life drained out of them, and we keep sending more young people to this island for the island to consume them, or like to this tropical climate.
Yeah.
So it was for when it came out, it just hit a nerve in terms of what was happening culturally.
Right.
But now in this issue, I think it's so appropriate. That island, that sentient living mutant island, produces a flower. There's a flower that comes that comes.
Wait, so
from
hold on. So that island, do mutants still live there?
No, it wasn't. In the 70s when they fought this island, it wasn't inhabited. It was an abandoned island. No one lived there.
Right, and then the retired mutants went to the island.
OG mutants they didn't rent an island.
No, I said went.
Went to the island. Yeah.
Yes.
So they went there. They got captured.
Right.
Then that's why Xavier recruited the new mutants: Colossus, Storm, Nightcrawler, Wolverine, and some other bitches to go to the island to rescue them. So it was old X-Men, new X-Men teaming up and beating the shit out of the island.
Because the island itself was
It's sentient. It was a mutant island. It's a living thing.
Okay.
They beat the shit out of it. Cool. All these years later, that island's back, but in a big way. So that island, that mutant island, produces this flower. And Xavier took this flower, found a way to synthesize it to create 3 new drugs.
Interesting. Okay.
So there's
I like where it's going.
3 new drugs have come from this flower that only exists on this island named Krakoa.
Sure.
1 drug increases the lifespan of a human by 5 years.
Whoa.
Another drug cures any mental illness. So any illness that inflicts the mind, that pill cures.
Okay.
And third, a super antibiotic. So basically a universal antibiotic to cure the body.
So I'm assuming the regular humans, when they find out about this,
Will want it.
will absolutely want it.
Well, that's why these 6 representatives from these governments have come to meet with Xavier. Because these pills only work on humans, not mutants.
Right.
So Xavier has synthesized these 3 pills, and he's offering them to humankind if their governments recognize the island of Krakoa as an independent nation for mutants. So it's forcing the world, like all these superpowers, to recognize the independence and the sovereignty of Krakoa as the mutant
the
country.
home nation of
mutants. And that's why these 6 people have been brought there to negotiate and see if they will agree, if their governments will agree to giving Xavier what he wants.
That's pretty fresh.
Xavier doesn't show up because bitch is busy. Right. So Magneto goes instead.
But Magneto's a prick.
He is a prick, and he's fucking phenomenal.
Okay.
Because like I said, people, when you're writing Magneto, if you just go full terrorist bad guy, you're boring me.
Right.
Magneto's so much more sophisticated than that. He is a prick and a half, but while he's doing it, he's saying it. He's very loquacious as he's doing it.
Okay.
And he also empowers his people. He empowers mutants.
I can even feel that from just like the movies too.
Yes, absolutely. He has those moments.
He loves his mutants.
He loves his
wants
mutants.
the mutants to be all powerful.
He to
be better than fucking humans.
Better than fucking humans. He tells Pyro in X2 when Pyro's kind of getting down on himself about his powers.
A little bit of a Hitler vibe to him, but
I wouldn't say so. No, I would say I don't think a Hitler because his. Well, here let's keep going with the issue of what it does.
Sure.
So
they have these pills.
So these pills. So now, for the first time, as I'm reading this, I'm like, mutants now have leverage in this conversation because this flower is exclusive to the island of Krakoa.
Yes.
So it can only be synthesized by them.
Correct.
It can't be mimicked. And the effects of these three pills are not just life changing; they're like pharmaceutical company ending.
Yeah, of course. I mean, they change. If something like that came out in real life, it would change the entire world.
A pill that cures any mental illness. That means
it
changed the entire world overnight, like crazy. And Xavier's saying but you have to recognize our nation state. Now, there's another element. Those are the three things for humans. Now, there's three things for mutants. The island of Krakoa is the home and the nation state to all mutants.
Yeah.
But that flower or that soil or from Krakoa, if planted somewhere else, like anywhere else in the world, it will take root, it'll grow, and it will create a small, very, very tiny ecosystem. And it becomes a place, and that soil or earth or plant life of Krakoa is, the main island, the living island, is connected like mentally to wherever that place is. And it's funny because I don't know if you knew this, but in international law, when people make embassies or consulates, when you build that place or you put it there, you put soil from the home country.
Oh, I didn't know that.
You do that so that when people say that's why when people go to their embassy or something, and the governments you're on your homeland soil.
Oh, nice. I didn't know that.
So they can't do anything. So it's a play with that like wherever that soil is, that's home soil of the Krakoa. Portals there now. That same thing, that same Earth, it can create portals, but only mutants can go through them. Which means every ecosystem, every biome, the main island, and all of those places across the Earth, all connected. Which means Krakoa, the nation, isn't just the island; it's everywhere.
Right.
But it's just these pieces. And there's no limit. It could be under the sea. It could be in the Arctic.
It would behoove the humans to not plant the plant everywhere in an attempt to create their own pills, so they don't have to get them from the mutants.
Well, would they? But this is I'm sure
they'd be losing soil.
I don't think Xavier would be dumb. That flower is strictly to the mainland of Krakoa. Wherever the biomes are, wherever the other small, there's no way they're there.
No, I know, but I'm saying that how humans are.
They're going
to try to get their hands on that plant and put it on their own soil to try to make the pills on their own.
But here's the other problem. Remember, Krakoa is sentient. So anything, any biome or any ecosystem that is implanted is he can feel it.
Right.
So he won't allow, even like the portals, they're his portals that allow mutants to cross through. Humans can't cross through them unless a mutant asks Krakoa for permission.
Right.
So this island, this living island, can protect itself and the people who inhabit this state from any invaders.
Right.
So that's already a security system like no fucking other.
Right.
Which is insane. Now, these 6 people are like, hold on, because just like the way all military people think, let's talk about the military aspect about this. Sure. You're basically telling us that you have portals scattered around the Earth that can transport people any distance within seconds. That's a military threat. Like, you've just basically told us that you have a military threat here. And Magneto,
especially if they're so anti-mutants, like
because they're scared of
they're
mutants and their
scared of
powers.
mutants, so now you're giving the mutants an extra
Mutants now
way
have
now an extra way of getting in and out of your lands,
countries
easily.
and anything
I mean,
very easily.
Granted, some of the mutants can fly, so it doesn't matter. But
There's so many mutants that can teleport themselves.
it doesn't matter. But they're so scared, and that's still a scary thing.
It's a wide scale that lets
for a
all
dumb
mutants
human
do
that
it.
has no idea what they're doing.
So they're basically, so they call out Magneto like, bitch, you are just telling us that you have this fucking military advantage. Like, the fuck? Like, you think people we're just gonna go along with this? And Magneto's like just sipping his gin. Like, I don't give a fuck. Like, that's not what we're here to talk to you about. And this is where like the bomb gets dropped in the comics. You don't know about this, but like I said, there was that period of time where Marvel didn't own the X-Men, the films, so they were just taking shits on the X-Men, and they did this thing called where Wanda, Scarlet Witch in the MCU, who's a reality warper, said the words "no more mutants," and 99% of the Earth's mutants were wiped out.
Jesus,
they lost.
That's like a fucking Thanos flick.
Like, kind of, yeah. So they
Thanos
all
snap.
So 99% of mutants on Earth lost their powers. Now,
what about the 1%?
They kept their powers, but then things have changed since blah, blah, blah. Now, in this issue, it's revealed that actually hold on. Did Fox
also own the rights to X-Men comics?
No, but they only own the rights to movies. But the thing is, why would Marvel invest in strong writers, art in the book to promote a property that they're not profiting from?
Right, okay.
It's just simple marketing. Rather, let's shit on this so that people, But then what Hickman did with that plot point said, actually, which is called like the Genosian genocide, when the whole like 99%. All that did was delay the inevitable, because what they're discovering is. The mutant population is growing so rapidly that humans on Earth only have at best 20 years left before they're gone.
Interesting.
Before everyone's a mutant. So what Magneto's saying because remember, like I've explained to you before, the ideologies of Magneto and Xavier, where Magneto wants a world that's mutant superior, and Xavier wanted a world where humans mixed and they can coexist.
Right.
What this is basically giving Magneto is, I don't have to do anything. It's already proven that it's happening. You are all going to be wiped out because it's just biological evolution. It's just what's happening.
It's survival of the fittest.
Yeah, it's not even survival of the fittest. It's just
they're.
Well, actually, it is survival of the fittest.
Survival of the fittest. Regular humans are just regular humans.
Yeah. If you're telling me that the species, if the species has evolved to develop powers and abilities, that means that branch of humanity is stronger than those who don't. Yes. So obviously, evolution will continue.
A guy like Wolverine that can re-heal himself is stronger than me.
Right.
If that's in his genes, that's stronger than me.
And his lifespan is way longer than normal humans.
Yes.
So
that's people like that will survive much longer.
So Magneto tells the guy, like, I don't really give a shit, like, what you think is a threat or not. I'm simply giving you information, and I'm letting you know, like, very, very confidently, like, y'all's is done. You got 20 years left.
God, Magneto's so badass.
Instead of us taking the world from you, which has been his goal for decades, it's already over. What we're telling you is, for the time being, Krakoa is our nation. It's a small fraction of the world. We will commune there and we will live there until nature runs its course and you guys are gone, and then we'll take the world as it's rightfully ours because nature and life has decided. So you see now, and I think I've briefly said this before, maybe to you or to like other comic book people, I've always wanted a sweet spot or a character that was the Gandhi between Xavier and Magneto's ideals, where there's the, not mutant superiority, but that mutants could have dignity within themselves without having to depend on humankind's charity, but also not being so abused the way under Xavier's dream they've been. And Krakoa has kind of served as that, where now there is this option with these 3 new drugs giving mutants leverage with humans and these new developed information that humans are done anyway.
It would be smart for the humans to make a deal with them and not
and to give
Not
in
act
to
the
a
fool, not act the fool.
not act the fool.
Right.
And Magneto being the son of a bitch that
Right.
he is. At the end, it's at the end of the issue, he basically reveals, because he has like these two other young women with him
Right.
as they're touring with these going. They invite the 6 people to look through the biomes, to look through everything, but they don't take them to the main island. They say
Right.
like, you're not invited there. That's for mutants only, so you're not welcome. But we'll show you like what it's about and stuff like that. And then he reveals like, oh, you thought that we invited you here to serve something for you, to convince you of something. This wasn't to do that. This was to just show you what the fuck's going on.
Right.
And one of the girls, the young girls, the girls that's with them, that's like touring, is a telepath. So she was reading their minds to figure out what was going on in their heads the entire time.
Okay.
And so at the end, she's like, yeah, this one doesn't give a shit. This one's has been on board before we even started the tour. This one's actually not even serving his government. He works for something else. This one has a weapon.
Hilarious.
This one has a weapon, by the way. Do you want me to do something about that, or do you want to handle it?
That's why.
So it was a moment. It was an amazing moment where Magneto's letting it be known, like unapologetically, we're not here to cater to what you need, what you want.
We're the top dogs here.
We're the top dogs.
We're the top dogs. Like, don't fuck with us.
Don't fuck. And so
Like, just make this deal. Be smart. Make this deal. Nothing's gonna happen. Like, you guys are gonna get extra. You guys are gonna get this medicine. Let's do this.
He only brought, and like it's not. But he's not about it. For Magneto's like, it's not about the deal. There is no deal. That's what it's gonna be.
Right.
And he ends, and the issue ends with him saying, "You see, I know how you humans love your symbolism almost as much as you love your religion, and I needed you to understand. You have new gods now." Like, the BDE of this character is fucking insane. So what's interesting to me about this is that, yes, this is a game changer, because strictly for the fact that mutants have leverage when they've never really had it before.
Right.
And with this new nation state, like, what school? There's no more school. The Xavier Institute was a refuge, a small little mansion, not small mansion, but a mansion.
Correct.
For mutants to go to learn and to try to readapt to human society. But now, because of what Krakoa's given them, Xavier and Magneto have found this space where they've always wanted the same thing, a world where mutants could exist and thrive.
Right.
But now Krakoa has given them a way to do it, and for them to both compromise on the things that they both weren't willing or able to compromise on.
Right.
I thought it was very interesting for the first, like, especially there's one of the panels at the very beginning of the issue when Jean Grey's getting to the main island, and really, really well drawn. And the use of color is fucking phenomenal. And she's bringing some kids to the island, and she sees Xavier out in a field where the sun's setting and has
The
like
colors
that,
do look pretty dope.
the magenta sky for the setting sun, and the kids are running, and you see Wolverine playing with 2 kids there on the grass.
Sure.
And like, this choked me up because.
All right. I mean, Gab, choke me up. Come
It
on,
does.
man.
I love comics, all right?
Come on, man.
Look, it's fucking the grumpiest mutant of the bunch, Wolverine,
Sure.
laughing with kids. And the reason why it chokes me up is because any good story, it has a connection to reality. It made me think of like the immigrant crisis we have on the border right now. The universal truth is that all people want a place to be, to live, to be happy, to thrive, to be okay, to not be scared.
Of course.
And for the sake of the story for X-Men and mutants and what the world's done to them, you have this image where it's Wolverine laughing with like this setting sun, which obviously is a symbolism for hope, and enjoying and just being at peace. And thinking basically what's happening in the real world now. It was just like a shit, because this is the power of X-Men and what we haven't been getting in X-Men comics for a decade. There's no comic book that I think is more relevant to, or more of an allegory for the shit we're seeing happening in the world today
Than X-Men.
Because it's a book that's all about what it means to be different, what it means to be Jewish, what it means to be gay, what it means to be black, what it means to be a woman, what it means to be any disenfranchised group. In a world of people who fear or hate you.
Right.
And so you'll find, if it's well written, even within a panel that has no words, you'll find connections. And so if Jonathan Hickman, if this is where he's going with these 12 issues, I'm really, really fucking excited of what he's going to do.
Yeah, I mean, look at it. Sounds like this premise is pretty dope. I don't read comics, but maybe I'll take a look at this one.
And also, like, I'm a comic fan, but the truth is that some people don't understand. I actually don't like month to months or like what I call popcorn comics, like the mainstream comic lines.
Sure.
I actually really don't like them. I read Miles, Miss Marvel, Ironheart because they're minority characters who are getting solo titles, and I want to support them financially so that they keep making those comics.
Right.
But I don't actually like them because there's no actual consequence. Death is not a real weighted thing.
What the minority ones?
No, I mean in monthly comics in general. Because if someone dies in a monthly comic, they'll just be back like in a year or something. There's no real weight to their story. Now Hickman,
I didn't even know there was monthly comics.
yeah,
It's a monthly comic.
like an issue comes out once a month.
For how long?
Until they cancel it or until that end, and then they start over.
Like, what about the Justice League one that one?
It's on issue number 28, and probably once this writer's done, Snyder's done, they'll restart with another number 1, new writer, blah blah blah. So, but it's the same characters technically under the same continuity. These characters never die. Death is the most mortal thing that exists. It's the most permanent thing that exists. And when death isn't really
isn't the same thing going to happen with this?
But that's what I'm saying is that for me to give a shit about something that's part of this, which technically is popcorn comics, I'm like, okay. And now maybe these 12 issues of Powers of 10 and House of X they will feel like they're their own bubble, and that the comics that come after will return to the same vibration of popcorn comics. But if you give me 12 issues of something that can stand up by itself and really feel like its own story, no matter what happens, I'm going to be really happy because I've been waiting for an X-Men story to do that. So like Dark Phoenix, we all know that they bring Jean Grey back in the most shameless fucking way in the mainstream comics.
Right.
But for me,
but in Dark Phoenix, she dies.
She dies. She dies at the end of Dark Phoenix.
But that's just a story. That's just like a story, though. All these are all stories that just have ends.
No, they don't, because the mainstream comics never end. Marvel will always have these characters, and they will always bring them back to life when they want to use them. So death is not a permanent thing. So even though Jean Grey dies at the end of Dark Phoenix, which is the most weighted thing that can happen, especially considering what happens in that story, then some years later, Marvel Comics is like, yeah, we want to do a comic with the OG5, so you got to bring Jean Grey back to life.
Right, but it's
takes the weight.
It's drawings. So like it's not like
but for the sake of a story, for the sake of storytelling, that takes away the weight of the actions that happen in previous installments.
Sure.
Which is why I try to look at certain story arcs as their own thing.
Yes.
Rather than within the
overall
continuity.
Yeah.
The Jean Grey thing is something I've had to accept just because there are stories that come later in the main continuity that I'm like, she's around. I'm like, fine.
Yeah.
But I really like to try to see them as much as like a singular thing as possible.
Right.
Which is why I love The New Frontier is a DC graphic novel that's completely separate. It's its own thing, separate from the main continuity.
Yeah, we'll have a conversation.
We'll do that.
We'll have a conversation about continuity in comics because I have a lot of questions pertaining to that.
There's confusing as shit. If you don't know comics,
it doesn't make any sense that a comic character can die but then come back, but it's all still part of the continuity. But then there's also 3 other stories going on.
Not all the time, but yeah, sure. Sometimes there's other things going on,
Yeah,
characters are popping up in multiple storylines.
Right. It just doesn't make any sense.
You have to be if you're a comic fan, you've invested the time to get it. You get it. But like even when I started, I was like, wait, what? Where do I start? Where do I stop?
I guess before we leave, what comments do you have on the DCEU? Because I know you were mentioning something about that.
What comics am I reading?
What
for
comments?
Comments? Weird. Well, that was something I was just thinking about. This is so separate from Hickman's new run on the X-Men.
Look, what closing remarks on this comic? Because I'm gonna try it. I'm gonna read it. I don't know how far I'll get into it, as far as like the series goes, how many episodes I'll read, but
Issues.
I'll read it. I'll start it because it sounds like a pretty good idea.
It's a phenomenal idea.
It sounds like a pretty good idea to me.
You created real.
I like
content.
when they do things out of the box and do things that are new. So I like that idea.
I like it when there's an idea that's not just pew 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 monster of the week.
Yeah,
like
correct.
You created something that psychologically has.
You know me, and you know that the comic book movies that I like are all the ones that I've liked are the ones that are the closest to reality as possible.
And there's
that
for
idea
sure.
sounds to me like it's the closest to a realistic possible thing, and that's what I like.
Well,
like
you can see
Justice
the
League
connections.
one,
You can see the connections with this and what
Right.
things that happen in the real world.
Correct.
People wanting their own. People wanting a home. People wanting autonomy. People wanting their own state.
Yeah. It's realistic. It's realistic.
It's realistic. Magneto even says the island created its own language and alphabet.
Yeah. It's not like the Justice League comic that you were reading that I started, but I haven't. I've only read 5 episodes, because it's
so far-fetched.
so far fetched, and
It's
it's
so
just
far-fetched.
so over the top like superhero.
I agree. It's so over the top
that
superhero.
I'm
yeah.
just like, you know what? Like, I don't know what any of this means. I don't know what this
Yep.
multiverse with green lights and yellow lights and the fucking diamond shit. I don't know what any of that means.
It's confusing.
But
yeah.
this is good. It's simple. It's a flower that creates pills, and they're leveraging it to humans.
Well, why I
It's
think
a great idea.
Which is why I think like you
And they just want
you don't
quality.
have to be confusing to be good.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
what I like about Hickman's first issue with House of X is that it
It
reads
can
like
be
a
simple,
movie.
but if it's deep, it'll be good.
It's deep. You created deep
Yeah.
just the thing with the 3 pills. I'm like, I'm listening.
Right.
I'm listening. So definitely I'm on board. It lives up to the hype. If you're an X-Men fan, I do think this is a game changer. I think it's definitely worth these 12 weeks. I haven't been this excited about a comic for a really long time.
Right.
The art's phenomenal. The use of color is exceptional. I love the uniforms. I fucking hate that they put Jean Grey back in her Marvel Girl uniform. I hate it. She's a 30-something-year-old woman. Why do you have her in that? But I digress. Really excited. I think if you're a new comic fan, if you're wanting to get into X-Men, I actually do think House of X is a good place to start because if you understand the gist, mutants are hated by humans. Done.
Yeah.
Jump on board, read it. You're gonna get it real quick, and it's gonna go.
Right.
It's fine.
Okay.
And so next Wednesday, you have Powers of 10, issue number 1 that comes out. And yeah, I've already seen things on Twitter, people saying that the second issue of House of X is even better than the first, and it's more mind-fucking.
How are people reading it already?
There are people who work in the industry that get access to these books early, fucking assholes.
Oh, sure.
And so like they read it. So
Interesting. Okay.
really pumped. So
Well, next week when this second episode comes out, I'll be caught up.
issue.
So I'll be able to discuss some more of what's happening in the episode.
Cool. So with that, we sign off.
See you
Fellow
later.
mutants. See you later.
Fellow mutants, Jesus.